Hi. Today we're going to talk a little bit about defence because I think our politicians have completely lost their marbles and they're living in a fantasy world. They are banging the drum for a war with Russia in which we would last all of about 5 minutes. Uh, I think what leaps to mind is the billion or so we spent on the procurement of refurbished Chinook helicopters. Out of that deal, we came out with 14 of the buggers. 14. Now, to put that in context, the United States Army lost over 5,000 helicopters in just in Vietnam. 5,000. And bearing in mind the in the modern battlefield, all the same threats exist that existed then exist today. But on top of that, you've got drone swarms and all the electronic gubbins. Um, then, of course, we've got the disastrous procurement of the Ajax, which doesn't work. And if they can get it to work, it's going to cost substantially over 10 million a pop. And if you remember the attrition rate of armoured vehicles in the opening days of the Ukraine war, you'll see these things, they don't last. They don't last more than 5 minutes. And given that Ajax is a command and reconnaissance vehicle with all kinds of specialist capabilities, it marks it as a target. As soon as it's spotted, they make a beeline to destroy it. So we are going to be fighting a war with limited numbers of vehicles that cost stupid amount of money that we cannot afford to lose and we cannot afford to replace. But it's more than just that. We uh, our our defence procurement system has been a mess for all time. We've been trying to sort that out for the last 80 years, and nobody has come close to succeeding. But our propensity is to overspec, and the Royal Navy, the Air Force, and the Army will add additional requirements, and then there's the bureaucratic impetus to make a one-for-all piece of kit that all three services can use, be it rifles, drones, aeroplanes. There's always this standardization, which means the services don't get the kit that they actually want. And where this all falls apart, of course, is our capacity to fight a war is contingent on a few other factors. Chiefly, you can't build your own armored vehicles if you have no steel production, and we've shut that down thanks to net zero. But of course, a nation at war also needs to be able to feed itself. Well, we can't make our own fertilizer anymore because that was a gas process, and thanks to net zero and high energy costs, we shut that down. So we no longer do that anymore. The government has actually got it in for farmers. They would rather build a solar farm than an actual farm. Um, so we're not going to be able to feed ourselves. And then the other thing is, if you want an army to fight and win, they're going to need an inherent sense of nationalist patriotism. Well, you've spent the last 3 decades drumming that out of young men and to frown upon patriotism, and you've been calling the plebs racist for the last 30 years. Nobody wants to go and fight for a borderless economic zone, and particularly not if it leads to the extinction of the natives just so they can be replaced by third worlders. So, yeah, you're not going to get many people volunteering to fight, in which case you're going to be reliant on conscription, and good luck with that. The elites have never been more hated. But then, in terms of defense, I kind of think I don't really see Russia as an imminent threat. We don't see a build-up of tanks. They're not about to race across the Fulda Gap. There's no helicopter build-up. We don't see the kind of pre-invasion forces. So where they get this idea that there's a war with Russia that's imminent, when it's barely managing to sustain the attritional war in Ukraine, I don't know. It's complete madness. Um, Certainly, Russia doesn't have a navy to speak of. I don't think they've got many submarines that are actually serviceable. And where I think they can causes serious problems is that sort of hybrid warfare mischief making, going after pipelines and internet infrastructure. This is where, again, thanks to net zero, we've made ourselves especially vulnerable because we have times in December when the wind drops to zero and we are almost 100% reliant on our gas stations and interconnectors from France and Norway. So all the Russians have to do is sabotage the interconnectors, and Britain doesn't have any power for better part of a month. Total grid shutdown. So that kind of dictates where defence spending should be going. Um, if you haven't been following developments, we've seen RFA Proteus pressed into service. That was one of the ships that in civilian service that would go and service the oil rigs, but that's now been pressed into military service, and that's actually more use to us than a frigate in terms of safeguarding undersea cables and underwater infrastructure. So we're going to need more of those, and we're going to need more inshore patrol boats, that kind of thing. Um, but no, that's not where the investment's going. We've got these QE carriers. These turned into a complete money pit, and I don't think we can actually deploy more than one at any time. And I'm not wholly certain that they are at full operational capability. In terms of the real threats to British sovereign territory, though, I think we've got a major vulnerability in the Falklands because there's a lot of oil and gas to be explored down that way, and the Falklands are an ideal base to do that from. Britain, of course, is not doing that thanks to net zero. We're not enjoying the money we could make from that. No, we're just going to let it sit there and do nothing with it. And of course, we've gotten rid of our amphibious capability. We got rid of HMS Ocean. We got rid of HMS Albion. We don't have that kind of task force capability anymore. Anyone who wants to come and snatch the Falklands, be it Argentina, possibly even Brazil, possibly Russia, possibly China, literally anyone could, and there's nothing we could do to stop them. So that kind of suggests some kind of long distance aeroplane, maybe, or an actual navy. And then, as I said in one of my previous videos, one of the things that's going to cause an awful lot of problems is the illegal fishing fleet owned by China, because when they start to overfish, they collapse inshore fisheries, they collapse the local economy, especially around Africa. And in order to make ends meet, the women turn to prostitution. Then you get an AIDS epidemic, and guess what? You get mass migration. So these are the real threats to Britain. And that's the kind of thing where we might actually want to have patrol ships off the coast of Africa to deter illegal fishing. This is a positive future role for Britain, in that Britain has always been a maritime nation that has safeguarded the world's fishing fleets and trade routes. This is what we're for, this is what we're about. So that's about looking after our own interests, but of course our own political elites don't really think in terms of foreign policy that way, and they're certainly not thinking about mass immigration as an existential or national threat. They are completely obsessed with Russia, and their values are so completely alien to everybody else. If you ask people out in the street, what do you think is a greater existential threat to Britain, Russia, or mass immigration? I think you'll find the vast majority will say mass immigration. So, in terms of defence, priorities are completely alien. We're not going to be able to fight Russia. We're not going to be able to stay in a war. We're not going to be able to develop our own production lines. It's just for the birds. They are pure fantasists. It kind of reminds me of the last days of Hitler when he's in the bunker moving sort of divisions around on a map that don't actually exist. That's the same level of fantasy we're seeing from our own politicians. And it's coming from Penny Mordaunt. It's coming from the Labour benches. It's coming from all the old parties, and Reform isn't calling their bluff because uh, they are mired in accusations of being Putin sympathisers or taking bribes or being funded by them. So they have to go through this performative ritual of supporting this march to war and perpetuating the war in Ukraine. This has got to stop. This is madness, because as much as anything, if we do choose to go to war with Russia, well, Russia is a nuclear power, and if at any point it looks like it's losing, it can certainly pop a nuke if it wants to. No possible good can come from this, and our politicians are simply dangerous fantasists, and we need to be getting rid of them as quickly as possible. Anyway, that's about all I've got to say on the on that part of defence. I have gone to the trouble of writing quite a lengthy defence policy looking at recruitment, retention, all the issues around that, new structures for the army, changing the culture, getting rid of wokery from within the ranks. It's reasonably comprehensive, but I think I lack the technical knowledge of all the different modern weapon systems. So I certainly would welcome contributions if you want to get in touch and help beef up that defence policy. Um, One of the things I've looked at is diminishing the standing army and making better uses of civilian reserves, and turning the army into a logistics and training organisation that can gear itself up for rapid conscription if needed. So I'm looking for wholly new and innovative, cost-effective ways of defending Britain, because ultimately, as much as we can't afford the army systems and weapons as we are currently set up, Britain is broke. We cannot afford a large standing army. We cannot afford all these ever more elaborate, expensive toys. And more to the point, in the age of drone warfare, we are lagging far behind on this kind of thing, where some of the drones that we've been producing, we're going to end up spending 500,000 quid a pop on these things, when the Russians and Chinese are pennies per unit. You cannot win a war when you lose the economic war, when they're producing more weapons and cheaper, and we're producing elaborate, expensive ones that are too expensive to lose. And unless we get on top of that mindset, we are in no position to defend any of our assets anywhere, let alone go to war. Anyway, thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next time.